Good morning, Tim. Good morning, everybody. And this is a great view down into the beginning of the trickiest track probably on the planet. Not the highest speed, but the most consistently demanding. The 4 S-curves lead you on to what is laughingly known as the straight. It's the bend away. It's got 2 curves in it. Critical setup here in Jena into the Kreisel. A full 360-degree, 3-pressure Kreisel. See the steering there to get you off down into the lower labyrinth. And this little flick-flack, left, right, left, takes you down towards the fastest part of the track, down into Echo by the lake at the bottom. Now you start to climb uphill, out through the old Finnish Koenigssee curve. There's still another turn left before you eventually carry your speed across the line. It is fast, it is challenging, and it is a beautiful venue to come sliding.
We have 28 athletes in today's competition. The first group of them, the first 15 to be exact, have qualified for the World Cup. On Friday at the One Run Nations Cup qualifying race, the rest of the group out of the seeded athletes as they count their way down to the final racer, Diana Eitberger, as the Germans with Tobitz and Geisenberger hold the top 3 spots in the World Cup overall. So kick back, enjoy the action. Tim Singer along with Martin Haven. If you've got comments and questions, we welcome our viewers around the world to tweet us or email us at Luge Announcer or luge.announcer@gmail.com. And first up, from Poland, Martin.
Klaudia Domarajka, and we talked in the doubles race yesterday and in the men's races yesterday, you with John Morgan, about the increasing youth of the field, and there are a number of athletes in this field born this century, which for you and I, Tim, is a little bit of a worry, and Klaudia is one of those. Didn't race in last year's World Cup race here. She's come up through the qualifying field in the Nations Cup competition on Friday, so she has fought her way through the Nations Cup field into the tail of this field, gets her World Cup shot here. Good run down the bend away, nice and straight. And into the Kreisel. Look at the 3 pressures. You see the sled wavering up and down. You try and keep a flatter run as you can. And in the interesting little whistle coming off something on her sled, you don't normally hear this.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you talk about the young athletes. We have a 17-year-old coming up in just a short while here. A familiar name, new athlete, 52.218 the finish time. That's looked like Peter Pence, the Austrian, coaching, or helping to coach maybe the Polish team this weekend.
Well, there's no question about it. This track is always a challenge. You're never still on the sled. Take a look here. This is down in the lower labyrinth, looking over the body and trying to keep the head as much out of the wind as possible.
Well, Claudia's had one podium this year, part of the team relay. A little nice story with Poland finishing 3rd in Oberhof in the relay competition. We will have our next relay a little later on today. 22-year-old
Katarina Simonikova from Slovakia. She is our second slider.
Sorry about that, Martin. I was just messaging about 5 minutes ago with her brother Jakob, who normally we would see down there in the coaches area cheering on his sister, but Jakob retired last month from the sport. We missed seeing him around, but glad you're up early watching as well, Jakob.
Well, when your family is racing, that's part of the deal, isn't it? And of course, a little less early in Poland than it is for you in Vermont, Tim.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, you can see her in the red now behind our first slider. So Simonikova trying to find a little bit of speed out of the Kreisel.
Now into the green.
Yeah, nice run down through the lower labyrinth. So when she's in the green, that means she's ahead on the clock. Out of Echo, got to avoid the wall on the right-hand side, but not steer too much. 2 corners uphill, little bump there into the final corner. That will have cost her time, but she comes across the line a 10th in front.
This was just before the finish. Most of the damage was after she crossed the line, and fortunately, as you can see, with the wave and the smile, Katarina is just fine.
Well, as fine as you can be when you slap your leg on the ice wall at 75 miles an hour.
Exactly.
And here we go, yeah, just gets on very early. The corner hasn't really even started. She's just driving a little too hard out of Zeal curve. The left-hander that preceded it crossed too hard over into the right-hander at the bottom of the track. Next up, Elena Shmaha, first of two Ukrainian athletes, just 20 years old. Again, she made the field in the World Cup race here at the race last year at Koenigssee. Watch the paddles. Ooh, little meander down into that right-hand wall.
And still steering. We're going to see such a variety of paddling techniques today, Martin. And we're going to see some athletes towards the end. Deanna Eitberger, the last to go. Wouldn't be surprised to see she and Ivanova put down a dozen paddles or close to it. Others 3 or 4. Just a question of how safe and secure you feel with that first corner approaching.
And the real problem is that the sled is not stable at all.
Nothing.
And certainly
no
not when you're sitting upright, exactly. Nice looking exit from the Kreisel, nice and smooth down the lower labyrinth. Now we saw this yesterday. First heat, everybody being a little conservative. Second heat, everybody hanging it out for maximum speed and a few crashes. Shmaha just a little behind. There was a bit of steering going on down in Echo as well. 64 thousandths back. So she is in second place ahead of Klaudia Domarajka of Poland. But our leader is Katerina Simonikova of the Ukraine, of Slovakia, I beg your pardon.
This is the 37th World Cup to be held here, Luge World Cup to be held here in Koenigssee. That's certainly a classic, legendary track. In fact, they've hosted 6 World Championships here, including the very first year the track was completed in 1969. And a 7th World Championship will be held, a makeup spot, a little later on this month. It was originally scheduled, Martin, for Canada.
Yeah, and the same with the bobsleigh and skeleton World Championships. They were scheduled for Lake Placid, but will now happen in Europe. Elena Stetskiv of the Ukraine is our 4th slider in a field of 28 women from 11 different nations. Look at the runners there. You can see it's not a long, flat runner blade like you'd see on an ice skate. It is like a rocking chair. So imagine you're in a rocking chair on ice trying to paddle it forward. The first thing that's going to happen is it rocks and it meanders around. And that's the real drama at the start. That's why the older, more experienced athletes tend to be the faster starters.
That's a great analogy. Oh, the exit of S4 Curve 9 was a little dicey, but she stayed off of the wall with a great quick correction.
And you see how quickly you can correct the sled because of those sharp runner edges. You run on the edge of the blade. So a little like a slalom skier, it's all about the edge. She's back in the green now. Good run down through the lower labyrinth. Out of Echo. And again, just a little whistling from the sled. Don't usually hear too much of that. Across the line. That's a big run. 1/4 of a second up. Don't forget, the last athlete dropped behind by 46 thousandths. So 1/4 of a second. That is a big step forward for Elena Stetskiv of the Ukraine.
Well done, well done. And again, as I mentioned, that exit of S4, this is not what we're checking out now, but I was very impressed with how quickly she righted the sled.
And the problem with the sharp runners is if you oversteer, then it has a massive knock-on effect, and you will see that at some stage during these runs. That was a big effort. We're now into a group of qualifiers, Tim, who didn't race in the field last year. Our 5th starter, Nina Zergler. Now, she's got a pretty well-known name. If you've been following Luge for as long as we have, you'll know the Zergler family name. Hugely successful. Armin Zergler, one of the all-time greats of the sport. And look at the way that she gets straight down into the prone settle, right in the middle of that drop down into turn 5, Teufelsmühle. That was excellent starting technique. Not the fastest, but she made no mistakes.
We will see Armin in just a second here, I suspect, with his yellow jacket down at the finish area, watching all of his Italian athletes, but a little extra closely to his daughter. And she really was just a part-time competitor, Martin, over the last couple of seasons. Still very young, just finished high school last July. This is her first full season as a competitor on the World Cup. 9 thousandths up at that split.
Well, if she's inherited even one iota of the family genes, she could have a very entertaining career. And again, Turgler, possibly not the most Italian-sounding name you'll ever have heard, but there is her dad, 6 thousandths in front, so she is at least the leader at the moment.
None of the Italian team have an Italian-sounding name, and that's for
None of them
good
sound
reason.
like opera singers, do they? No.
Exactly right, or pasta dishes. It's because they all hail from the Südtirolian region, closer to Innsbruck than anywhere else in Italy, and that's the culture, that's the tradition. We've talked about this a lot. Would we potentially see a growth in the sport of Italy, a la bobsled, where it's not uncommon to have a Südtirolian driver and an Italian brakeman? Anyway, this is an exciting one to watch. Selena Egla, her sister, well known, but she is the youngest athlete competing this weekend here in Koenigssee, 17 years old.
Yeah, she was still a babe in arms when I came to the Bobsleigh World Championships here in 2004, so very youthful part of the family sliding. And again, one of the great things about the luge world is the youth at which you can start. You can start very young indeed. In Austria and Innsbruck, you'll see kids as young as 3 or 4 barely able to walk with their bobblehead helmets on, going down on luge sleds, not from the top of the track, but they learn early.
Well, Selena is also competing in women's doubles, which, as we all know, will be the newest discipline to the sport of World Cup Luge starting next season. So it's great to see things branching out even more.
And of course, for her to start that when she's 18, it means by the time it hopefully gets into the games for Milan Cortina, she'll be experienced and just the right age. And like the men, may well have a chance to compete in the singles and in the doubles. There aren't too many men that have made a success of that in recent years, but with a younger field, a newer field in the women's doubles, that might well be a possibility.
Sure, why not double that huge prize money, right?
Well, double the chances of an Olympic gold medal. That's the prize, isn't it? Well, there you go. There's the exit of S4, feet down, trying to stop the sled from spinning like a top. When you get into trouble in the luge, the tendency is to sit up, which puts the weight on the front, and that tends to make it more tail happy rather than less, so it's counterintuitive. Next up, Verena Hofer, 19 years old, from Italy. Armin Södler has clearly been going around the primary schools on a recruitment drive to get lots more kids involved in the sport.
Well, keep in mind that part of this youth movement we're seeing right now, this season at least, is the fact that due to the pandemic, there is no junior World Cup circuit. So it affords these nations a better opportunity to bring the young athletes to the senior tour. And what a great experience all around.
Absolutely, 38 thousandths ahead from the start. So we will have an Italian leader at the bottom of the track. Will it be Nina Turgler or will it be Verena Hofer? And battle of two 19-year-olds, Hofer with the advantage.
And if neither of those two, it will be the next athlete to come down. Also from Italy. Well, she's been in the green the entire way. This is that C curve, curve 13, which has been renamed after Josef Fendt, longtime president of the FIL, the Fendt curve, and she crosses the finish. That's a great time, 51.691.
1600s up. Mixed emotions, I'm sure, both for Nina Turgler and for her dad. You know, when your dad's the coach, it's one thing, but if you have an argument with the coach, it then follows you all the way home.
That's right.
So,
well, you know, we're seeing it because all of these three well-known offsprings, Demchenko, Prock, and Zugler, all the daughters of legends in the sport, but their parents are coaches, and they have to be objective coaches. Save it for the dinner table back home during the off-season, right?
Exactly right. So we have an Italian 1-2. Verena Hofer leads from Nina Turgler. And now we move on to Brittany Arndt from the USA, and all the North American athletes making their first World Cup start again because of the travel restrictions, the coronavirus pandemic put in before Christmas. No North American athletes were in Europe, but we get a chance for Brittany now to make her World Cup debut for the season, Tim.
Well, she looked very confident there at the start with several hard paddles, 6 fastest start time for the 22-year-old from Park City, Utah, another luge town, Park City. She spends her summers in Lake Placid with her boyfriend. You know who her boyfriend is?
No.
Cody, bobsled
All right,
driver.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that could well end up being a sliding family. Nice
Indeed.
looking exit out of the Kreisel, and that pays dividends down through the lower labyrinth. She's now in the green, and she is ahead of Verena Hofer. Brittany Arndt finished in 14th place in Koenigssee in last year's World Cup race.
Nicely done, 51.462. Welcome back to the North Americans. 4 from the USA in today's competition. 1 Canadian, Carolyn Maxwell, just missed making the main draw by 2 places in the qualifying of Nations Cup 2 days ago.
And I'm sure,
She
there
gets
she
the
goes,
red
right?
light.
Which means that she has to go off and be weighed and measured, but that shouldn't be a drama.
Usually isn't, but you
Exactly.
never can tell.
Exactly. Just a little wayward down through the lower labyrinth. But I'm sure she is glad to be sliding against somebody other than her own teammates, just for a change. Next up, Marion Oberhofer from Italy. Finished in last year's race in 16th place. Again, another younger Italian athlete, just 20 years of age. Running the clock all the way down here, Tim, on the play.
Sure, and that 16th in the World Cup finale last season marks her best result still on her very young World Cup career. Hey, we have a message in from Craig, who's up early, I believe in Calgary, watching, and Craig wants to know, do most tracks have different start houses for each luge discipline? Why not all start from the same spot? Well, that's 2 different questions, Craig. Yes, most do have the separate start areas, but why not start at the same place is a great question and an ongoing discussion. I know a lot of luge athletes, Martin, that the women, they feel they should be right there starting at the same spot as the men. As you know, in IBSF, that's exactly how it works.
Well, you kind of go back a little bit to the games in Vancouver, where the world champion, the Olympic champion, were leading the complaints that because the men would drop from the top start down to the doubles and women's start, the women then had to go from the junior start. And they said, this is the Olympic Games. We're going from a start that you put teenagers off. I think definitely in the women's singles, there is a very strong argument for going exactly from the men's start. From the doubles, because the extra mass of the sled, the speed might be an issue, particularly maybe on tracks like this, but I think for women's single, there's definitely an issue. But again, we're not the federation. That's an argument the athletes are continuing to have, I think, with the federation.
Well, Summer Britcher is a big proponent of it, and she is one of the FIL athlete representatives, and never shy about stating her opinions. Now, here's another American.
Yep, Emily Sweeney, another part of a sliding family, 2 sisters sliding. And again, Tim, we heard in the doubles yesterday that, they were looking maybe to try and get a top 10 result. I think here, the game for today is just to get a World Cup race under your belt in what has been the craziest season that any of these athletes will have lived through. All feet down as she comes off S4, down the bend away. Emily, a major drama.
Emily, one of 2 Americans in today's race who has a World Cup race victory. She took a win in Winterberg, also 2 years ago, a World Championship podium. She had some strong paddles up at the top, and this from an athlete that has battled some wrist injuries throughout her career.
Little heavy steering down in the lower labyrinth, rather out of echo, but she still brings it across the line, 71 thousandths in front.
2 of the 4 USA athletes have come down. They hold the top 2 spots right now. In fact, it's USA, Italy, the top 5 at the moment.
It's not looking very multinational, is it, really? But that's just the way that the cookie crumbles at the moment.
Yes, so she had wrist surgery, I believe. Definitely a bad wrist injury. That's several years ago now. But look at that. That's confidence in her return.
And here just a little late with the steer down off S4, so she has to correct onto the bend away, but she got away without too much drama. Our 11th starter in a field of 28 is Aileen Frisch from Korea. And yes, that may not be the most Korean name you've ever heard, because she changed nations in the lead up to the Pyeongchang Games, Tim.
Well, she had retired from the German program and then got that opportunity as they were developing a program in South Korea. So now she really is forced to commute back and forth and spend an allotted amount of time in Asia to keep that dual citizen status. Finished 8th at the Olympics.
Yeah, and she grew up as a young German slider in the era that was dominated by Silke Kraushaar, Silke Otto, and Bavaria's Barbara Niedenhuber. There were no World Cup spots.
No,
and
that's
so
right.
she retired probably long before she was done, and then the opportunity to come back. It happens in athletics, doesn't happen so often in sliding sports, but Aileen Frisch has had the opportunity to do so and continues to compete. She's still only 28, 5th place at the line, and she is at least here representing Korea.
Unfortunately, the last couple of seasons have been highly forgettable for Aileen. You know, she had that 8th at the Olympics. She had other top 10s on the World Cup, but really having trouble getting it together over the last few seasons, which we certainly hope to see her improve upon that.
Yeah, 4 18th places this year are her best results. But again, you sort of sense that maybe the full Korean program isn't really firing on all 8 cylinders this season.
No, that is certainly not uncommon for a smaller nation post-Olympics.
And again, World Cup debut for the season, midway through the year, shows you just what a strange year it's been. This is Ashley Farquharson, 21-year-old American athlete, finished in 20th place last year in the World Cup race here in Koenigssee. So top 20 plus will be a personal best for her.
Ashley told me just the other day, kind of a bad news, good news. The first half of the season, she said, was very, very difficult, knowing they missed out on those first 4 races. But she added it was really fun watching all of the European friends crush it on track. She had a similar incident to Emily Sweeney, her teammate there out of S4.
Yeah, again, just a little bit sharp coming off of S4. Big second pressure in the Chrysler, could leave her in trouble on the exit. It does. She's too far to the right, manages to sort it out, but again, cutting too much ice. And we often say, Tim, it's not the athlete that drives the most, it's the athlete that drives the least that wins the races.
Minimize the friction. 3rd place for Farquharson. USA can cancel the race right now. They would sweep the podium, which actually has happened, Martin, in a World Cup race. The USA went 1, 2, 3 in Lake Placid 4 seasons ago.
Well, it may not happen here in Bavaria. I'm just leading you gently into that one, Tim.
In fact, you wouldn't even make a lot of money on a bet for a Germany sweep today. And that's happened.
Probably wouldn't.
That's happened at least 3 times so far this season. Yeah, 3 times the Germans have swept the podium this season.
So a US 1, 2, 3. Who is going to upset that apple cart? Well, it could be the first of our Russian athletes in today's field. Katerina Baturina, 28 years old. Didn't race in the World Cup last year, didn't get through the qualifying stages. Best result this year, 14th place in the sprint race in Winterberg.
In fact, Martin, she didn't race much at all season last year. She was that odd woman out on a strong Russian program. But here in Koenigssee, 2 years ago, she had the lead after the first run of a World Cup race. She fell off of the podium, but that proves to me that she is somewhat comfortable on this track.
And it may well be that that is not a point that's lost on the Russian coaches either. If she's in form and she goes well on the track, let's sub her in. 109.8, so that's 67 miles an hour very nearly. Oh, and again in trouble in the labyrinth, having to work hard. You can hear the runners carving the ice.
Well, she will not cross into the lead here. In fact, she'll be back out of the top 5. What's interesting, Martin, is that the Russian setup this weekend, and they had a good day yesterday in the men's competition, is such that one little mistake, you're probably going to drive into a wall. If you can stay off of those walls, these sleds, yesterday at least, were faster than any nation, Germany included, except maybe Felix Locke. But
yeah,
he's in his own world right now.
And again here, you just see her dropping into the labyrinth. She hits the right-hand wall, the first of the doodles, then she's thrown high on the exit of the labyrinth, and she's still fighting the sled all the way down here into Echo. Gets into Echo about right, but she carves so much ice, and then she gets it wrong on the exit because she hasn't got the speed. The feet go down again. Summer Pritchard. So are we going to get a USA 1, 2, 3, 4 stacking up the stars and stripes at the top of the field? 26-year-old Summer finished in 4th place, just out of the medals here last year.
5 World Cup victories, the most by any USA singles athlete ever. And most of her victories have either been in North America, 2 as well on Lillehammer. So Summer trying to spread the wealth a little bit. She's had podiums on several other tracks.
And the deal with Lillehammer perhaps is, with everybody having very limited knowledge of it, that it evens out the field a little bit.
It does. You know, several teams do train there each year in the preseason in a non-pandemic season.
Yeah.
Ooh, double hit out of Kreisel.
1100's up. She will be in the red behind Emily Sweeney at the bottom of the track. No question about that. But how far back will she drop? She's still got good poise on the sled.
Stays in the green.
Oh,
She lost nearly all of that advantage, but in fact, it is a 1, 2, 3, 4 USA leaderboard at the moment. But bear in mind, we are now just exactly halfway through the first run. So the big kids are about to be let out of school for recess.
Well, there you go. Look at the way the sled gets bounced up in the air. Let me tell you, if you tried to lift the sled with Summer on it, you would feel that that is going to take a lot of force. And that's momentum out of the sled. So she shook her head, coach shook her head. Yeah, she wanted a lot more out of that run than she got. 15th of our 28 starters. We talked about the sliding progeny. This is Victoria Demchenko, the daughter of Albert Demchenko, Russia's strongest ever
Victoria
slider.
Had an incredible crash here, Martin, 2 years ago at the World Cup, down in what's now the Fent curve at the bottom. And this is kind of Victoria's strategy. She will go fast. She will be very close to out of control a lot. She's also a very gutsy athlete that picks up that sled and gets back to the top of the track to run again after a crash.
Well, that apple hasn't fallen far from the tree, because if you put the word Albert in the beginning of that sentence, that would be exactly the same. I've seen him have spectacular crashes in the doodles. She finished in 3rd place in the World Cup race here last year. Let's see if she's got the pace. 66 thousandths behind the woman that she just beat to the podium.
Now in the green. This is what I was saying about these Russian sleds. They are finally dialed in this weekend, and they have really struggled to find speed so far this season. But
wow,
how about that advantage?
Wow, 3/10 she found below the Kreisel. Is she actually secretly German?
Well, you
that
know,
is fantastic.
The last
speed.
several seasons, the Russians were keeping right up with the Germans in all 3 disciplines, women included, with Demchenko and Ivanova. So this is sort of a page out of last year.
Wow, and there was the reason why. Perfect line down through the doodles, and at that speed. Well, there you go. There are some of our fans. Normally they would be here in person, but they're here supporting anyway. And Anna Bayreiter's mum, or I guess, or perhaps grandmother, was there holding up the scarf proudly. This is Anna, the race winner here last year in the World Cup.
One of 2 victories last season in what was her first year as a World Cup slider. She did not make the German team at the start of this year. In fact, this is just her 2nd race of the year. Cheyenne Rosenthal took her spot at the Nationals right before the World Cup began.
And of course, the reason that both she and Cheyenne were able to race at all is that Germany's top 2 luge women were both having last year off as maternity leave. They are back. But Bayreuther, who is from here in Berchtesgaden, born and bred in Berchtesgaden itself, she is a local girl, and she, as the race winner last year, should have a good shot. But she needs a massive lead now, because there's still a good dozen strong sliders to come.
Part-time student nearby in Salzburg, also part of the military program here in Germany. She crosses just ahead of the Russian.
Wow, 41 thousandths, little nod from Norbert Lock, the coach there, but that's not going to be enough to be our first heat leader. If it is, then she and Demchenko could well be in the medals again. One more medalist from last year is in the field, Julia Taubitz, but she will be fourth from last to go. So yeah, pointing to the family there in the bleachers.
She gets the red light. That's Yeti, who just gave her the high five. He is, that's the proposed name, the provisional name for the World Championship mascot, Yeti. But I was informed to let our viewers know, Martin, that if people have another name they'd like to suggest for the mascot, by all means, send us a tweet, send us an email, and they'll consider new names.
Sounds cool. Next up, another daughter, as we spoke about earlier, Hannah Prock, daughter of the great Marcus Prock. 20 years old, so still very young. Team silver medalist in the World Championships in 2019, one of her big achievements in her fledgling career.
Also a podium here in Koenigssee 2 years ago, her first ever World Cup podium.
Well, now we know her dad, Marcus Prock, but did you know that her cousin is also an Austrian winter sport great, Gregor Schlierenzauer, the ski jumper?
A lot of winter sports blood in these families. We've got one luger who's got a cross-country skier, five-time Olympian cousin.
Wow, five-time Olympian. That must have some lungs.
Yeah, that's a lot of skiing.
Yeah.
Over long distances. I hope it's not the 50K race.
That's a lot of punishment. Well, she had mistakes coming down out of the S's, and that dropped her behind. So Hannah comes across the line in 9th position, 67 hundredths back. She'll be very disappointed with that. You can see somebody believes there's a lot of potential there. You don't get to be a Red Bull program athlete without somebody thinking that there is an awful lot to come from you.
Well,
here we go.
Back when Red Bull was still an unknown beverage, Marcus Prock, her father, was actually one of the very first athletes to be sponsored by what is now a giant in the sports industry.
18th slider of 28, so we have 10 to go after red-headed Lisa Schulte from Austria. Just seen her teammate Hannah Prock stumble a little. Hannah finished 21st in the race here last year, but Lisa Schulte was a top 12 finisher in Koenigssee. Let's see if she's got that kind of pace today.
2 sixth-place finishes on the World Cup are her best, both on her home track in Innsbruck. She still struggles a bit at the start.
Yeah, giving away 2/10 means the rest of the track has to be absolutely perfect. If you're a step behind coming out of the blocks in a 100-meter race, Tim, you know it's always going to be a fight unless your name is Usain something.
Yes.
Nice line through the Kreisel, nice even parabola. And a great exit. Now here we go, 2800s back. She really needs speed here. Must be absolutely picture perfect to be anywhere near the front of this field. No, feet down.
It is one of the better speeds we've seen. She cleared 68 miles an hour, but that puts her back in 7th place. John Morgan and I talked about this a bit yesterday, Martin. You know from covering all of these tracks, some of the tracks' speed will give you a total indication of where they're going to end up. Others, no indication. And then a track like Koenigssee, it's kind of back and forth because the speeds are very tight from generally in the top 20.
Yeah.
Only,
the problem
only
is,
a mile or two apart.
You get the speed going into the Kreisel and you can completely have tossed it away by the time it comes up on screen. And down in the lower labyrinth, again, the more you need to adjust your line, the slower you will come out.
Part of that, of course, is also where on the track they have those speed traps.
Yeah. So our only Swiss athlete in the field, Natalie Marg, with beautiful views of Samaritz around her helmet.
She has been on her message to me. She said she's been not luging but tobogganing since the age of 9, which of course, Martin, is perfect. The perfect way to describe someone from Switzerland. It is still the home of sliding sports, and Luge is so thrilled to have the World Cup returning to that great track in St. Moritz this season.
Well, of course, luge and bobsled and skeleton all come from basically tobogganing. You know, you look at a luge, that's you as a kid. You look at a bobsled, it's originally sledges tied together by ropes. And so the whole thing comes down to where kids started. It's just, you know, slightly older, drunker kids turned it into a sport. That's the way it was.
So true. She loves the speed, of the feeling of speed. She said that's her biggest thrill in taking part in luge.
And the precision that you get from a luge sled as well is really intense. Well, she is a field of one here for Switzerland, so clearly being taken under the wing of the Germans a little. Norbert Locke may have some words of wisdom for her there.
Yeah,
it didn't look like a horrendous run, but she didn't have speed at all.
No, I'm not sure what the problem was, because it wasn't an awful run by any stretch. I mean, really good line here in Kreisel.
Yeah. But then spears up a little in the second pressure, drops her down. Then she has to steer hard to get the line she wants as she drops down into the C curve. Well, the Austrians and the Latvians watching trackside along with everybody else. And next up is Kendia Apajoda of Latvia.
Kendia had a podium a couple of weeks ago. I think it was the Oberhof race. And she finished 3rd there. She's 8th in the World Cup standing. She's been pretty consistent, although just that one podium. We do want to update our viewers who have been watching. Her brother, Christer, certainly one of the emerging stars in men's luge. He had a crash at that same Oberhof race during training. We thought he'd only be gone for a couple of weeks. That's what the original word is. Now we find out he's broken his leg, and Christers is out for the season, which is unfortunate.
And it is another sliding family, of course, because her mother, Iva, was also a luge single slider for Latvia. Recently enough to be in my memory, that's for sure.
Okay, yeah, well, I mean, you've got a distant memory. You've been covering the sport for 64 years, and you know, there are very few that you haven't covered.
And in fact, when we go to Sigulda, we stay in the family hotel as well. So it's a very, you know, like the Ducour's family in skeleton, it is a very small sliding fraternity. Latvia, an independent country now celebrating its 101st year of independence, of existence as a nation.
Not consecutive, right?
No, well, it's been a nation, but it hasn't necessarily been independent all that time. Yeah.
Right. 3rd place.
Yeah, nice run from Kendia Apajoda. 15th place finish last year, so at the moment she is looking to go better than that.
Germany, Russia, Latvia, and then 4 Americans. That's the top 7. We have 8 still to come, including what they call the super seed. They've got the seeded athletes, of course, but the super seed are the top 6 over the last 3 races. And we've got 3 very formidable Germans still to come. Well, it's sad to see no spectators there, because this is just one of the most raucous, luge, crazy places in the world on a normal Sunday in the winter.
It absolutely is. Next up for Italy, 25-year-old Andrea Furta, finished in 7th place last year. Best of the season so far, 6th position in Winterberg just before Christmas.
Andrea certainly playing the role of mentor with the rest of the Italian women's team, considerably younger and new to the sport. Vetter had a World Cup podium last year and several top 5s.
Little hard onto S4, but she got away with it. Not too bad down the bend away.
We send our best wishes to Sandra Robacher from Italy, who's missing the entire season due to her 2nd major injury in 3 years. Sandra, a World Cup race winner a few years back.
109.7 in the Kreisel was decent speed, but Andrea dropping behind a fraction. Clean out of Echo. through the seal curve and up to the final corner across the line, 1700s back. Top 3 spot for her. So Anna Bereiter of Germany leads from Victoria Demchenko, both podium finishers last season, and Andrea Furter in 3rd spot. And we now have 7 to go, so she will be top 10 at the end of the first heat.
2 Russians still to come, 3 Germans. Do you want to put any money on it, Martin, that we might see a Germany 1, 2, 3, 4 at the end of the run?
It is definitely a possibility. Well, there's the hard take onto S4. And again, you know, it doesn't look like a major drama, but it just means that the runners are cutting into the ice, those sharp edges, and when they cut the ice, that slows you down. It's all friction.
Well, the focus on the eyes of the world champion,
Yes.
Katerina Ketnikova.
She's 26 years old, didn't finish last year's World Cup race here. She crashed out in the 2nd heat. Again, that win it or bin it mentality that seems to be so much a part of Russian Luge psyche.
Well, for Katerina, it certainly paid dividends on her home track at the World Championships last year, as she captured gold not just in the classic 2-run race, but in the sprint competition. Those were her first 2 ever top of the podiums. You and I were talking about that yesterday,
yeah.
Martin. And the number of times in Luge bobsled skeleton where someone's first win ever was in a major competition.
Absolutely right. 2600s back, but a really strong run out of S4. 109.6 is there or thereabouts. Let's see how she comes out of the Kreisel. Straight down the tubes. 3800s back though. She hasn't got the speed to win this one. Where's she going to be? Maybe top 4 or 5?
Now, even farther back, I believe, as she is visibly slower on that uphill finish. 8th place, 51.466.
4400s back. So Anna Bereiter is still the leader from Victoria Demchenko and Andrea Furter. And we now have 6 to go.
Well, we set the table now. We'll catch a little slow-mo here, but let's talk about our next several. It's led off by Geisenberg, then Ivanova, then Tobitz. You've got 3 more after them. They represent all of the wins and most of the podiums this season.
Yeah.
Natalie, back from maternity leave, 6 races, 6 second-place finishers, although we can hardly call her a bridesmaid, Martin, because she is not only a bride and a new mother, literally, but she has so many great championships in her career.
Exactly right. World Cup leader as well in her first season back from maternity. So Luge mom, points leader, 32-year-old Natalie Geisenberger. And again, look how quickly she gets down into the prone position, like she snaps in rather than settles in, and that's confidence.
Natalie comes from the nearby town of Mischbach, which is very well located, about equal distance to this track, the Innsbruck track, and the city of Munich. How about that for a familiar recovery out of S4?
Yeah.
Did you see how calmly she corrected that sled?
And look, despite the mistake, she's in the green and she's got the best speed we've seen. 1:10.8 for the local heroine. Haven't seen Barbara Niedenhuber in shot yet. I'm sure she's here somewhere.
Well,
she's very involved with running the track.
She is, but she's not on the jury, and believe it or not, they're not really allowing anyone to come
Well,
here.
no, that's very true. Very true.
Well, how about that advantage?
Yeah.
Yeah, Norbert saw what happened out of Curve 9. Yes,
Yeah.
he knows that that was true professional error fixing, really.
Well, she may be bored of being second, but dropping to third might not be what she had in mind. So here we go, out of S4. Yeah, just slides down off S4. And you know, if it wasn't for super slow-mo cameras, you wouldn't even have seen that with a naked eye, barely. And again, watch the toes. So little movement of the feet, and that shows you that her line was right all the way down. You have to believe, because if you're second-guessing your line, you're overdriving it, and that never works well. Natalie Geisenberger leads with our final 5 sliders still to go here in this first of 2 heats. Race 5 of the Everspesha Luge World Cup Women's Singles. And it's Tatiana Ivanova, 29 years old now, 6th place finisher in last year's race, the winner in Altenburg.
In fact, that's the only non-German victory in women's luge so far this season. She hugs the rail, that right rail at the start, still has what I think was the 3rd fastest start time, but let's see if that turns it red. It does right away.
Yeah. Kaisenberger didn't have the fastest start, but she was fastest at the line. And this is the opposite of golf, Tim, where you
start off
drive for flash and the short game is for cash. This is the other way around.
That's right. And also, if you in golf, if you shoot a 76 on day 1, you still have the other rounds to make that up. It's a little tougher in luge.
But the deal is the same. You're still behind and you've got to come back. 1:10.3 was good speed from Ivanova. Let's see what she's got at the bottom. It wasn't as good as Geisenberger. She's not going to be our leader. She was really meandering around at the bottom there. Completely lost her way out of Echo. The final 3 corners, all uphill from Echo onwards. She will want to have a second go at that. Unfortunately, this run, like the second one, will count.
Tatiana had an awful start to the season in 20th place. She's been top 7 every race since, including the victory. And this is what happens here at the start. Paddling hard, seems even, but you mentioned it, Martin. There are no grooves. Doesn't matter how well your form is. Sometimes the sled does what it wants to do.
And again, it's all about balance. It's almost like riding a unicycle. The balance is so critical. Down here in the lower labyrinth, just a fraction left in the final part of the doodles, means she's going to steer hard down at the bottom. So Julia Taubitz, our silver medalist from last year's race here, and has 4 wins already this season.
And in taking that second last year at the World Cup finale in Koenigssee, she clinched the World Cup overall title over Ivanova, of course in the absence of Geisenberger and Eidberger. I call her the happiest athlete on tour. She's always smiling, Martin, and you'll see that down at the bottom when the shield comes off, regardless of what her result is.
Now, you would guess from her surname that she's not Bavarian, and you would guess from the color of her sled that she is from Saxony, so her home track is Altenburg. And if you can drive Altenburg, Tim, you can drive anywhere.
You can. Now, she trains mostly out of Oberhof now, but yes, indeed, she grew up in Saxony.
Nice looking run in the green, leading Natalie Geisenberger. And that's the equivalent of being ahead of Lewis Hamilton in Formula 1. Little late there out of Seal Curve. Holds it to the line, a 10th in front. That is a really strong run from Julia Taubitz, last year's silver medalist here in Koenigssee.
You think she'll be smiling here?
No, because she'll remember that error at the end of the run. And this just a little to the right of the ideal line means she works a bit hard. This is what we were looking at, though. There's the flop.
Still a full half second off of the track record, and we have seen no track records challenged so far this year.
All right, so Julia Taubitz is our leader from Natalie Geisenberger and Anna Bereiter. 3 to go, first of our 2 heats here in Koenigssee, Bavaria. For Latvia now, Elisa Tiruma, 30 years old, finished in the top 10, 9th place finisher here last year. Best result this season has been a 3rd place finish in Winterberg. Seventh fastest start, Tim, so she's already behind by a few thousands.
Winner of an Olympic medal back in 2014 as part of Latvia's team relay squad. They took silver. Ooh, she also makes it interesting out of S4, but stays right down the middle through bend away.
Steering a little hard, 109.9 kilometre an hour off the pace, so this is going to be tough even to make it into the top half dozen. She was in the top 10 last year, just in the World Cup race here. And with a couple more to go, maybe 7th, 8th place wouldn't be a real disappointment. But again, another mistake there.
You mentioned sliding families as she comes through in 8th place. Another sliding family from Latvia. Yep. Her sister Maya was an Olympic luger. This is her 12th year on the World Cup.
And in fact, she has dropped into 8th place behind teammate Kendia Aparjoda. So there is a little inter-Nissan battle there. They are in 7th and 8th, just ahead of our three of our 4 American athletes. So 8th place at the line, she'll be top 10, but again, a little hard at the end of S4, those 4 S's, the Schlangengruber, the Serpent's Pit, and down here in the lower labyrinth, again, just a little late all the way through there, and paying the penalty all the way to the line. There's no corner on this track, or really in any track, that is taken in isolation. They all lead into each other.
Well, we've got Madeline Egla grabbing the handles now. She's one of the fastest here at the start. Her season, Martin, all top 8s. 3 of those are 4th place finishes. I believe at least 3 or 4 times this year she's been on the podium after the first run only to fall off. Still looking for her first podium. Everyone rooting for Madeline.
Nice, strong start, 52 thousandths ahead of our current leader, Julia Taubitz, but Julia mined for gold below the Kreisel. Okay, just a little sharp coming out of S4.
Second fastest start time. She's been a much more mature, much calmer athlete this year. Sometimes she struggled with her emotions in her first few years.
Good speed, 1:10.4, but half a kilometre an hour off the top speed. Can she find enough to stay in front of Julia Taubitz and have the lead with 1 more sled remaining? Across the line in 3rd, so she'll be no worse than 4th place at the end of the first heat, and that is within a shout of the medals. Finished in 5th place in last year's race, so she's already on an upward trend.
Well, she's firmly planted herself this season as the best of the non-Germans. She's been steady, she's been consistent, and you know, Martin, there's one more race, a second race to be held in Innsbruck later this month. It's only a matter of time before Madeline ends up on the podium. Who knows, it could be later today.
Still just 22 years old, the under-23 world champion. And she is currently lying in 3rd place with only our final slider in this first of 2 heats to go. And it's another returning Luge mom, Diana Eichberger, now 29 years old, from Erfurt. So Oberhof, her home track as well. And she lies 3rd in the points with 1 win. And funnily enough, that was on her home track.
That was, although she bases herself out of Munich with her partner Chris and their new baby, Levi, who will be celebrating his first birthday next month.
That's going to be tough to pronounce for all of us when we get him making his World Cup luge start, Levi Eichberger. It's going to be a clash of consonants, isn't it? Well, she drops behind Julia Taubitz, the current leader. She had a slightly faster start. Good exit out of S4. Steering down the bend away. Watch the toes. Just nudging the sled, almost thinking the sled through those curves.
Well, Diana told me right before the opening race that her goal this season was to be patient and maybe sneak onto the podium once or twice. Martin, she's already done it 4 times, including that win in Oberhof.
Well, one of the things being a new mum teaches you is patience and perseverance. And the value of sleep, which all athletes know anyway. Across the line, 6th place. It wasn't tidy below the Kreisel. It was not tidy. So the Olympic silver medalist and new mum comes across the line in 6th position, which means Julia Taubitz leads a German 1-2. Madeline Egler in 3rd.
A lot of fun little storylines. They'll be flashing these results up in a minute, Martin, but just to preview things, Geisenberger again sitting in the 2nd place position. Will it be 7 weeks in a row for Natalie as the runner-up? And of course, Madeline Egla looking for that elusive podium. She's never had a World Cup podium, despite all of the 4th place finishes. She's in 3rd place.
Well, if you're going to take your first podium, either at home, in St. Moritz, or here, which is the home of luge, Koenigssee is the nearest track to Berchtesgaden. Berchtesgaden is where the FIL, the Luge Federation, is based, has always been based. And so this is ground zero for Luge. Julia Talbot's the leader from Natalie Geisenberger and Madeline Egler. Anna Bareiter, who was last year's race winner, is lying in fourth place. Victoria Demchenko took the bronze medal here last year, and she is in fifth, ahead of Diana Eitberger. So all 28 athletes will go again in the second heat. They'll go in their order of performance, last to fast. And so we will have to wait to see whether Julia